I probably was intimidated by the wealth and the power and the money there, because we knew who they were. We knew the relationship between the Skakels and the Kennedys.
It was Halloween night, 1975, in Greenwich, Connecticut. A wealthy town, usually quiet, buzzed with the innocent energy of teenagers out for some spooky fun. Among them was Martha Moxley. But the night of pranks turned into a nightmare. The next day, Martha's body was found in her own backyard. The scene was horrific. She had been beaten to death. Years would crawl by, filled with a heavy silence, before a glimmer of truth would finally emerge. Who could have done this to Martha in her own neighborhood? And why did it take so long to find out? Martha Elizabeth Moxley was born on August 16, 1960. She spent her childhood in Piedmont, California with her parents David and Dorothy Moxley and older brother John. In 1974, the Moxley family decided to move to a new place. Their destination? Bellhaven, a neighborhood in Greenwich, Connecticut that was known for its wealth. Dorothy, Martha's mother, finally remembered Bellhaven as a place where children could feel safe and have a lot of freedom. Leaving behind the familiar sights and sounds of California wasn't a problem for the 15-year-old Martha. In fact, it seemed she thrived on new experiences. Back in middle school, her classmates had even voted her as the person with the best personality, so making new friends in Bellhaven came naturally to Martha. On top of that, she was a shining star academically, consistently bringing home straight A's. Her talents extended beyond the classroom as well. She was a member of the basketball team. Life seemed perfect for Martha. She had a loving family, a supportive group of friends, and excelled in both academics and sports. Unfortunately, this idyllic picture wouldn't last. The joy in Bellhaven would be shattered by the events of Halloween night in 1975. It was October 30th, 1975, the day before Halloween. Martha decided to head over to the Skakel house next door to hang out with some friends. The Skakels were a well-known family in Greenwich, and there was a buzz around them because of their connection to the Kennedys. Rushton Skakel, the father of the household, had a sister who was the widow of the famous Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Martha wasn't unfamiliar with the Skakel boys. She had been spending time that evening with Thomas and Michael, Rushton's sons. The close proximity of the houses played a role in their friendship. The Skakel residence was just a short walk, about 150 yards from the Moxley home. This close distance, combined with a relaxed approach to supervision by the Skakel parents, meant there was a constant stream of teenagers coming and going at the house. The night before Halloween held a special significance for teenagers in Greenwich. It was known as Mischief Night, a time when pranks were the order of business. Traditionally, these pranks were lighthearted. Maybe some toilet paper strung across a yard or a doorbell repeatedly rung. Nothing too serious ever came of it. Just some harmless fun to kick off the Halloween festivities. However, on this particular Mischief Night in 1975, things would take a horrifying turn, as Martha would go missing. As the clock struck 4 on the morning of October 31st, 1975, Martha still hadn't returned home. Dorothy Moxley, Martha's mother, began to get worried. Unable to shake off the feeling, Dorothy started making calls, desperately trying to reach Martha or any of her friends who might know where she was. Hours ticked by, and with each passing minute, Dorothy's anxiety intensified. Finally, a glimmer of hope emerged when she managed to connect with one of Martha's friends. This friend informed Dorothy that she had last seen Martha the night before, in the company of Thomas Skakel. With this, Dorothy decided to head straight to the Skakel residence. Perhaps Martha was just there, having spent the night there after all. Upon reaching the Skakels' house, she knocked on the door. When the door creaked open, it wasn't Thomas who greeted her, but Michael, Thomas's younger brother. Dorothy's heart sank as she inquired about Martha. Michael's response, however, did little to ease her anxiety. He flatly denied seeing Martha. It wasn't long after lunchtime on that same day that Sheila McGuire, a friend of Martha, stumbled upon a horrifying scene. Martha was found lying face down on the ground at the edge of her own family's property, hidden beneath the shade of a giant pine tree. The discovery was shocking. Blood stained Martha's clothes, and her jeans and underwear were pulled down around her ankles. Despite the disturbing sight, investigators wouldn't find any signs that she was taken advantage of. Next to Martha's body was a gruesome weapon, a 6-iron golf club that had been shattered into 3 pieces. The viciousness of the attack was horrifying. The force used to hit Martha with the club was so strong that it had broken the club clean in half. A piece of the broken club was lodged in Martha's neck. The police investigation took a sharp turn when they discovered a crucial piece of evidence. At the Skakel residence, officers found a Tony Penna golf club that had missing pieces. Shockingly, these missing chunks seemed to perfectly match the fragments found near Martha's body. This discovery placed the Skakel family square at the center of the investigation. Suspicion naturally fell on Thomas Skakel, since he was reportedly the person with Martha when she was last seen alive. When detectives brought Thomas in for questioning, he claimed to have said goodbye to Martha around 9:30 p.m. outside of his house. He even had an alibi. His friend Frank Lutton. He swore that he was watching television with Thomas at around 10 p.m. However, Thomas's story started to unravel further. He claimed he went to his room after that to work on a school report about Abraham Lincoln. Unfortunately for him, his teachers completely denied ever assigning such a report. This contradiction raised serious red flags for the detectives, leaving them to wonder what Thomas Skakel was really doing that night. Michael Skakel, on the other hand, when asked, told detectives where he was on that night. He said he left his house around 9:15 p.m. and went to his cousin's place. Then he came back home around 11 p.m. As investigators dug deeper into the Skakel family, a different picture began to emerge. Gone was the facade of a perfect, privileged family. In reality, the Skakel household was riddled with problems. As Michael Skakel would later reveal, his family was far from idyllic. He described their home life as a tumultuous mix of chronic illness, alcoholism, and a strict Catholic moral outlook that constantly caused tension and conflict. This chaos had been brewing for some time. Back in 1973, tragedy struck when Ann Skakel, Thomas and Michael's mother, lost her battle with brain cancer. This loss had a ripple effect. Rushton Skakel, the father, spiraled deeper into alcoholism. With his own problems consuming him, he was less and less available to properly supervise his children. Left largely to their own devices, the Skakel kids had access to seemingly limitless funds, a dangerous combination with minimal parental guidance. Investigators also found a crucial piece of evidence: Martha's diary. Within its pages, Martha documented her thoughts and feelings, revealing details about her relationship with the Skakel brothers. The diary entries showed mixed emotions, particularly towards Thomas. On September 12, 1975, Martha wrote that she went for a drive with Thomas, Michael, and some of their other friends. She explained that she ended up practically sitting on Thomas's lap while steering the car. Martha revealed that Thomas kept putting his hands on her knee and even put his arm around her later. Martha's diary also hinted at some frustration with Michael. An entry dated September 19, 1975 described an argument. Martha wrote that Michael was acting crazy and his behavior was awful. She said he accused her of leading Thomas on, even though she only liked him as a friend. The diary entry indicated that Martha believed Michael didn't understand it was possible to be nice to someone without being overly physical. The investigation took another turn when Thomas agreed to take a lie detector test. He passed, temporarily clearing him of suspicion. With no clear leads and a lack of solid evidence, the case against the Skakels stalled. For nearly 2 decades, the murder of Martha remained unsolved, and it remained a burden in the hearts of her loved ones. The Martha Moxley case took an unexpected turn in 1991. Rumors surfaced that another member of the Kennedy family, William Smith Kennedy, might be connected to the murder. Although these rumors were eventually dismissed, these brought the case back into the public eye. This time around, Michael Skakel became a central figure in the investigation. Interestingly, it was the Skakel family themselves who inadvertently reignited interest in the case. Rushton Skakel, the father of Michael and Thomas, hired private investigators in an attempt to clear his family's name. He likely hoped they would uncover information that would divert suspicion towards other suspects. However, this move backfired spectacularly. 2 private investigators were brought in: Jim Murphy, a former FBI agent with experience, and his assistant, Willis Billy Krebs, who had previously served as a lieutenant with the NYPD. During their investigation, Murphy and Krebs interviewed Thomas and Michael Skakel about their whereabouts on the night of Martha's murder. The interviews revealed inconsistencies in the brothers' stories. It turned out both boys had lied to the police about their activities that night. Thomas Skakel admitted that he lied about the time he last saw Martha. He now claimed it was closer to 10 p.m., not 9:30 p.m. as he initially had told the police. Even more shockingly, Thomas revealed that he and Martha had engaged in mutual self-pleasure outside his house before he went inside. According to investigator Billy Krebs, Thomas became emotional during this confession, even breaking down in tears. However, Thomas's lawyer abruptly ended the interview before he could elaborate further. Meanwhile, Michael Skakel also contradicted his previous story. He admitted that he hadn't gone straight to bed after returning home from his cousin's house around 11 p.m. Instead, Michael confessed to climbing a tree outside Martha Moxley's bedroom window and then engaging in self-pleasure. These revelations sent shockwaves through the investigation. Author and journalist Dominic Dune, who had been following the case closely, obtained a copy of the investigator's report. He shared it with State Inspector Frank Garr, a former detective on the Moxley case, who had always harbored suspicions about Michael Skakel. Garr's suspicions, once dismissed, were now reignited with renewed vigor, thanks to the bombshell information in the report. In 1998, a special type of grand jury with only 1 juror and an investigator was assembled to take a fresh look at the Martha Moxley case. After a thorough examination of all the evidence, Judge George Thim determined there was enough to formally accuse Michael Skakel of murder and bring him to trial. On January 19, 2000, Michael was charged for Martha's murder. Adding weight to the case against Michael were testimonies from several of his former classmates at Elon School, a specialized institution designed to help troubled teenagers. These classmates claimed that Michael himself had confessed the crime to them while they were all students there. One such former classmate, Gregory Coleman, provided particularly damning testimony during a pretrial hearing in June of 2000. Coleman stated that Michael had bragged that he was going to get away with murder because he was a Kennedy. Coleman went on to allege that Michael had described making unwanted advances towards a girl who was not complying. and in a fit of rage, drove her skull in. These statements directly linked Michael to the violent act that took Martha Moxley's life. Unfortunately, Coleman wouldn't be able to repeat his testimony in court. He died tragically of a heroin overdose in August of 2001, leaving his pretrial statement as his only contribution to the case against Michael Skakel. The prosecution's case against Michael gained further momentum with the discovery of a crucial piece of evidence: recordings Michael had made in 1997 with a ghostwriter for his autobiography, titled "Dead Man Talking, A Kennedy Cousin Comes Clean." The recordings seemed to contradict Michael's claims of innocence. One particularly damaging excerpt from the autobiography played during the trial revealed Michael admitting to his state on the night of the murder. He spoke of being intoxicated due to alcohol and marijuana, and feeling aroused. The prosecution further highlighted a specific section of the recording, where Michael described his panic upon seeing Martha's mother, Dorothy Moxley, at his doorstep the following morning. According to the recording, Michael had thought to himself, "Did they see me last night?" Michael claimed he was concerned the Moxleys might have witnessed him engaging in private activity on their tree. The prosecution, however, argued that this was a veiled confession, suggesting Michael's true fear was being seen attacking Martha with a golf club. Michael's defense team countered by emphasizing the lack of physical evidence directly linking him to the crime scene. They also reiterated his alibi for the time frame when Martha was believed to be murdered. Despite the defense's arguments, the prosecution painted a compelling picture. They portrayed Michael as a jealous teenager, enraged by a romantic rejection, fueled by drugs and alcohol, who also had access to the murder weapon. The jury found this scenario convincing. On June 8, 2002, after a long and emotional trial, they delivered a guilty verdict. Michael was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. Even behind bars, Michael wouldn't give up. His lawyers and supporters continued to fight for his conviction to be overturned, filing a total of 4 appeals. Unfortunately for Michael, all of these appeals were denied. However, a glimmer of hope emerged on October 23, 2013. A judge ruled that Michael deserved a new trial because his original defense attorney, Mickey Sherman, hadn't provided an adequate defense. This legal concept is called constitutionally deficient representation, meaning Michael's lawyer hadn't done a good enough job according to the law. As a result of this decision, Michael was released on bail on November 21, 2013.
Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel walked out of court today a free man after more than a decade in prison. He was released on $1.2 million bail. Skakel was convicted in the 1975 murder of a neighbor in Connecticut when both were teenagers. But a judge threw out the conviction and granted him a new trial.
Relatives and supporters applauded when the judge approved bail. Michael Skakel did not speak to reporters, but his lawyer, Hubert Santos, did.
There were 2 tragedies that occurred in Greenwich, Connecticut in 1975. The first was, of course, the murder of Martha Moxley. The second great tragedy occurred in a courthouse in Norwalk, Connecticut in 2002, when Michael was convicted of the murder of Martha Moxley, a murder he did not commit.
Prosecutors, however, were determined to see Michael back behind bars. They appealed the judge's decision, arguing that Michael had received a fair trial the first time around. On December 30th, 2016, they achieved a small victory when Connecticut's Supreme Court agreed, ruling in a 4-3 decision that Mickey Sherman's representation had been adequate. But the legal battle wasn't over yet.
Give us the nuts and bolts of this reversal. Why now?
Well, this is really just such an astonishing long-term saga. The short version is that Michael Skakel was convicted in 2002. Then many years later, earlier in 2016, the Intermediate Appeals Court in Connecticut overturned the conviction on the very unusual ground that Skakel had been denied effective assistance of counsel, that his lawyer, Mickey Sherman, was so incompetent that Skakel didn't get a fair trial. The Supreme Court of Connecticut today said that conclusion was wrong, his defense was adequate, so the conviction is reinstated. I think, having sat through that whole trial, the Connecticut Supreme Court today was correct. Mickey Sherman made some difficult, perhaps incorrect decisions about how to defend Michael Skakel, but the reason Michael Skakel was convicted is because he actually was guilty, in my opinion, and I think that's the correct result in this case.
In a surprising turn of events, the Supreme Court reversed its own decision on May 4, 2018. With another 4-3 vote, the court concluded that Mickey Sherman had indeed failed Michael by not properly presenting evidence to support his alibi during the original trial. This meant Michael could potentially face another trial. The possibility of a retrial presented a significant challenge for the prosecution. Time had not been kind to their case. Crucial witnesses had died or their memories faded, making it difficult to build a strong case against Skakel. These factors made a retrial a very real possibility, but a very difficult one for the prosecution to pursue. On October 30, 2020, a state prosecutor made a significant announcement. After careful consideration and review of the case, they decided Michael would not be retried for Martha Moxley's murder. The murder charge against him was officially dropped.
Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel will not face a second trial in the 1975 murder of Martha Moxley. A Connecticut prosecutor announced at a hearing this morning that he could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Back in 2002, Skakel was convicted of killing Moxley in Greenwich. At the time of her death, they were both 15 years old, but in 2018, his conviction was overturned.
This decision left Martha Moxley's family heartbroken. Her mother Dorothy and brother John remained steadfast in their belief that Skakel was guilty. Dorothy, in particular, couldn't shake the feeling that Skakel's wealth and powerful family connections were the only reason he was a free man. However, there were those who believed in Michael's innocence. His cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., stood by him throughout the ordeal. In fact, Kennedy even wrote a book titled Framed: Why Michael Skakel Spent Over a Decade in Prison for a Murder He Didn't Commit. It was published in 2016. The Martha Moxley murder case remains unsolved to date and continues to spark debate. The unanswered questions and lingering suspicions cast a long shadow over this tragic event.